do an intro. Lacey just went to get him.
We'll be getting started here in a few minutes. They're going to.
Our high school senior who's introducing everyone is putting the final touches on his preparation. So, yeah.
I got nervous. Like, come on in here. Somebody's gonna bite.
That's okay. He can do it from now. I'll take him the mic. He can do it from here. He can project in here.
Ready?
It's scary sometimes when you do that for the first time. I remember doing it.
Quasi.
Just ask for the audience.
Yeah. Elijah.
Yeah. Oh, he has the microphone. That's the other. That's the third.
That's the
mic.
other mic. Yeah.
That's the other mic.
All right.
Oh, there you go.
We're ready to
Right
go.
there.
Here we go. Game time.
Oh, where the other microphone went?
Yeah. Good. Ready? You're gonna be great.
You
All
need
right.
to read those couple of sentences that somebody has sitting right here. You read that for me. Go ahead, do whatever you want. You're good, babe. Okay.
Turn it
that
over.
one comes over here. Huh? That one comes over here. Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the event. Tonight we'll be discussing the state of the Black America and the impact on society we have for the future. So, my name is Elijah Stinson. I am currently 17 years old and a senior at the Charles School at Ohio Dominican. And today, I would like to introduce our panelists. First, we'll start with Morgan Stevenson.
Morgan Stevenson.
Mark Stevenson.
Mark Stevenson. Hello.
Can we give him a round of applause and let them know we're behind him?
Yeah, let's do that. There you go.
Mark Stevenson is originally from Georgia and has lived in Columbus metro area for the past 2 years. Growing up in a state some would consider the birthplace of the civil rights movement, Mark was introduced to community activism at an early age. After attending college for a few years, he made a decision to enlist in the U.S. Navy, but went back to finish his degree. He is a former field organizer for Organizing for America, and he is currently a director for talent acquisition for the Navy, and the president of ADOS Columbus, a movement that advocates for policies that would directly benefit the Black community, reparations, criminal justice, and policy reform, education reform, Black businesses, development, and sustainability. Then we have Morgan Harper. Morgan Harper is currently running to represent the people of 36 years ago. Central Ohio gave her a newborn. Her campaign is entirely grassroots, doesn't take corporate money, and represents the true diversity of the Columbus community. She supports the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, systematic reparation for the historically economically oppressed, a living wage for all Americans, and policies that look towards a future in which America is a community of diverse civilians that fulfills the promise of the great nation. Then we have is
Hatim. There you go.
Hatim
Gye-Nyame.
Gye-Nyame.
There you go.
Hatim Gye-Nyame is a nation builder, a national builder, a creator of culture. Over the years, Hatim has touched the lives of thousands of people through mentoring and as well with passing down culturally defining folklore and mythological figures. Hatim continues to progress the culture in his current role as an administrator at Millennium Community School. He is inspired to see his life's work accumulates with having multiple people from his network serving in elected officials and other influential seats. The words are words are basically meaningless in the sense of Hatim. In describing the type of impact Hatim has on the minds of the young people he meets. To meet him is a 1 in a million experience. And then we have Tiffany White. Tiffany White was born in the Oriole Heights neighborhood, Oriole Heights neighborhood. She graduated from St. Liselle's High School and attended Capital University, where she studied criminology and political science. Community service has been a part of Miss White's life since her high school years. She currently serves a commissioner in North Central area. She was also a finalist in the 2016-17 City Council. Tiffany White is a mother of two kids, and is currently raising her former grandchildren due to her daughter's addiction to opioids. She is among thousands in Franklin County who have stepped in to raise their grandchildren. Tiffany White is dedicated to making the city of Columbus a place Tiffany White is dedicated to making the city of Columbus a place where no matter your circumstances or zip code, you have the opportunity to reap the benefits of hard work and realize success. And now I have a question for everybody. Do you have questions for any of these panelists at all? Or any sort of questions you might want to ask?
Not yet.
All right, come on, right?
Now we're giving the mic to Tiffany.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You did a great job. You have to give him a round of applause. There are not very many high school students that are civically engaged and willing to stand in front of a group of adults and do this. So we thank you and we appreciate you for that. So tonight's meeting is going to be about the state of Black America. And we got some intros for the panelists, but I have a few questions with regards to Black America. Hatim.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the state of Black America and what should the Black agenda be?
All right.
You have 3 minutes, sorry.
3 minutes?
Forgot to give the rules. About 3 minutes per question. So we're just going to try to get to know you and then I'm going to hit you with the good stuff.
Do I need the mic? Do I need the mic?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. The state of Black America, family, is we have made strides, and we all have to look, because when we compare our lives to our grandparents' lives or our great-grandparents' lives, it appears that we have made some progress. But in many ways, we have been moving backwards, because many of the things that we need to be happening in our community, need to be happening in our personal lives, are not happening. And it's almost as if we are caught up under an illusion of progress. We don't realize how America has put us in a situation to where we can't even recognize that we are at detriment. According to the numbers, if we look at the numbers and we follow the numbers, by 2053, we will have no wealth. That's within the lifetime of many of us. And those of us that have children, it's definitely within their lifetime. And this is, for me, a pivotal point for us here in America. Because right now, we have the ears of not only America, not only the Democratic Party, not only the Republican Party, but we have the ear of the world. through social media and things, we can make sure that people understand where we are. Now, right now, as Mark will go into a little bit more in detail, if you look at the numbers, the wealth presently of a black family is $1,700 if you take out all of the depreciating assets like a house or the car. It's $1,700. This means exactly in the middle. In this room, some of us have over 17. Half of us have over 1,700. Half of us have below 1,700. Now, to exist in America, that is unacceptable. We have, unlike many people talking about, you will hear people talking about, well, they're trying to annihilate us physically. No, we are being marginalized economically. And we have to come to that realization. And one of the things that we have to be able to do in this moment, because we are at a major point in history, in this moment, we have the opportunity to make sure that everybody knows and make demands, because we have a specific claim to America for reparations. So right now we are in dire need of a radical change in the political system, which is why I'm kind of excited to be on this panel, because I get to share the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
You got to stop me. You already know.
No, that's fine. So, Mark, what is ADOS and why is it important for this organization's movement?
Thank you. ADOS, that is an acronym for American Descendants of Slavery. It is a political movement based around lineage that is tied directly back to slavery and Jim Crow. So it's a native movement. It's important for us to put it into context when you're talking about lineage, because our ancestors were brought here to this country unwillingly, and they were used as labor for about 200 years. And then after that, we had a Reconstruction period. And 12 years of that, you saw black people being able to vote. And then we had the black codes and Jim Crow in the South. And that systematically, you look at slavery and you look at Jim Crow, they systematically stripped all the wealth out of the black neighborhoods. They put us in red line communities where they can depreciate the properties. That was our ancestors. For the military people, for the black military members, they couldn't get a VA home loan. So they kept coming up with laws that systematically institutionalized us into a state of non-existence as far as wealth was wise. So this movement, the ADOS movement, is seeking to right those wrongs and to request from the federal government a demand. Now, we're not asking. We're telling these politicians, if you don't want to get on board with reparations and a form of black agenda, we're just going to vote you out. It's high time that the American government realize that black people matter, especially those who have been tied to slavery here, because that's all we know.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, Morgan, you're running for the 3rd Congressional District, which is the second largest African American district in the state of Ohio. We're the 15th largest as far as women in the district in the state of Ohio, and we're number 1 with children under the age of 5. What would you consider the black agenda, especially in this district, but also for America today?
So, as Elijah mentioned in the intro, the whole reason why I got into this race running to represent the 3rd Congressional District is I did feel like exactly what Hatim was saying, that we're at a breaking point, and I wasn't feeling like the people that I was seeing representing us in office, in all sorts of offices, were being honest about that. And before starting this race, I was working at a housing organization and learned a lot about this, history of discrimination through housing policy, and the history is all there. And not only, became aware of some of it already aware of, but really seeing the outcomes of it, not just here in Central Ohio, but all over the country, the same dynamic playing out, that we are still living in a history of discrimination and redlining and the denial of wealth to Black people in this country. And so that's an uncontroversial statement to me. If anyone thinks that's a controversial thing to be saying, then I really question your understanding of history. And some of the data that we have referenced indicates that. There's the monetary data, the difference in the wealth gap projected to go to zero, which is absolutely right by 2050. There are the demographic and other stats, double infant mortality rate of the Black community in Franklin County, double the poverty rate, failing school systems, poor air quality. I could go on. And so to me, what it takes to do something about this is a combination of things. One.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
we're gonna get to those.
Oh, I haven't finished.
We're gonna get to a lot of those topics.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Tiffany's a harsh moderator.
No, that's okay. Let's start with education, because I think that is the cornerstone of success for African Americans, is to be not only educated academically, but educated in their history and their culture. So how has the current educational system that we are in affecting African American children?
Man.
Can I go first?
Go, you got the mic.
Can I go first on that?
I was like, I'm going to defer
All
to
right,
the educator.
so how does it affect? I think education is directly tied to all the problems that we have in our community. It starts with education and not knowing history, because it's not getting taught. So what our Black kids are getting taught, and even the white kids are getting taught, is a whitewashed history. They're getting taught revisionist history, is what we call it, and because they don't want them to know the true nature of the evils of this country. And when it comes to the Black kids, they're getting systematically bad education all over. It's not just here in Central Ohio. This is going across the country. If you go to any major metropolitan city, you will see that Black kids are failing in schools, and it has nothing to do with them. When I lived in Philadelphia, I saw, and my wife will tell you, 13,000 teachers were laid off in one fell swoop. They just laid off 13,000 teachers. All these teachers that got laid off were in the Black community. They shut down the schools and started busing kids all across the city to these other schools. But the problem was that there were gangs. There were rival gangs. So they knew that packing these kids in, and you talking about classrooms where there were 50 to 1. How you learn? Where you see or you go to the suburban side of schools and you see that the teacher-to-student ratio is 13 to 1, 12 to 1. That to me is a problem, because they don't care. They don't care about the education. They're taking away fine arts. They're taking away. That's the creative part of Black people. We are the creatives. They take away fine arts. They're not teaching them STEM. So they're not having the ability to compete. So when they get to college, they're not graduating. They may go for a semester or two, but then they're stuck with student loan debt, and they don't have a degree. So it's just a revolving cycle in regards to education. And I don't think that our politicians really are taking that seriously, because I don't really think they care. Because somebody has to be the bottom caste, right? We live in a capitalistic society. Somebody has to be at the bottom. And they have designated Black people to be that bottom caste. So,
okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you a specific question about education.
Okay.
Hi, Tim. How do we, because you're in education currently,
Yes, ma'am.
how do we address the negative determinants to ensure that the next generation will be competitive with their counterparts?
One of the major things that we could do is being honest with our young people. Has anybody in here ever took the time to talk to your children about what slavery was? And have you noticed how they talk about slavery as if it happened to somebody else? You know what I'm saying? Because in education is done to make others feel comfortable. So we are not allowing ourselves or allowing our children to really understand that when we're talking about slave, those that come out of the system of slavery. We're talking about our ancestors. So there's no connection. So now what starts to happen is if there's no connection, then I fit in with everybody else and I can do everything that everybody else can do. You know what I'm saying? Or what everybody else is doing. Without actually being educated, understanding that you have a responsibility to move your people to the next level. Now in the education system, also one of the major pieces that we're dealing with is that we are not allowing our children to understand that what they are getting is supposed to move them forward as well as the group. A lot of us come from that generation, and we're passing this on to our children, and we're seeing the results of that now. We're all part of that get the bag mentality. It's all about individual advancement. When in fact, an individual versus an institution always loses. Why? Because an institution is long-lived. We are teaching our children to compete as individuals against institutions that have been erected to keep them, as he described, as the bottom caste. And the way that we stay the bottom caste is going back to what I started with, is because we are, in a sense, allowing ourselves to be lulled into a sleep. Is that good?
That's great. Okay. You were under 3 minutes.
I'm trying to stick because you cut them off.
Time. So, again, you're running for the 3rd Congressional District. The statistics on education in that district are 86.2% are high school graduates or they have an equivalent, but 25.9% are college graduates. How do we not only move our children forward, because we're number 1 in the state with children, but how do we stop the preschool to prison pipeline?
So,
It'll come on.
Oh, okay then. So a lot of the things we're talking about to me are very connected. And so, educational results like that are a reflection of a system that is expecting children who are going through trauma, whose parents don't have stable housing, who aren't earning enough to live in jobs that support the family to excel in school. And I'll tell one quick story within my 3-minute limit that I think does demonstrate this quite well, why I'm actually optimistic, because what we need to start doing is turning these realizations into political power and getting organized. So I was on the West Side actually a couple of weeks ago and, talking to people about the campaign. There were some young women that were in one of the rooms there for a party they were having. And I'm like, I'm running for Congress. Well, of course, the reaction. Next, right? Who cares? Because most young people I talk to they don't even know what Congress is. But then I don't know what it was, the sticker, whatever. I'm about to walk out the door, and then one of the young women asked me, "Well, why should I vote for you? Why should I care what you're doing?" And then I'm like, all right, curious, interested. I'm going to go back, talk to her, and then I learned that they both go to West High School. They are working on organizing a protest that we see what you all are going to do to us. You're going to blame us when we don't do well in the ACT and then can't get into college, and you didn't give us any test prep. And these women are 16 years old. So we're not playing that game. We're getting organized, and we're going to call this out now so that you don't get to apply your failed narrative to us. And that was pretty striking for me, because that was a reflection of why I actually am hopeful about this moment, but we have to get to work on getting organized, because all of these things are connected. So a lot of times I get reactions about my platform as, Morgan, you're talking about everything. And I absolutely am, because we've had a generation of, pretending like things are not really happening, centuries for a lot of the issues that we're talking about, and we're need to get real right now, because we don't have a lot of time to address some of this stuff.
Okay, so where do we as African Americans learn about our lineage if it's not being taught in schools?
Now,
I know my answer, but
now, of course, we know a lot of this starts in the home. We have to start doing the research ourselves. We got to start having those discussions. We got to start sitting our children down in front of the elders, even if they're not related to you. They all have stories that they could go and start getting our children to get a connection with the history. But because we're paying taxes, some of this has to be made. We have to be able to get the political power so that we can start making sure that our story is taught, because it's not only important for our children, it's important for all children to understand, because our history is American history. If you take away our ancestors and you remove them from American history, there is no America. Let's be honest about that. And we need to be proud. We need to be proud of that, even through the pain. You understand what I'm saying? Because when it comes down to it, we are more American than anybody else here. The whole institution is built up on our backs, and we have to start understanding that, and we got to stop allowing others to take that away from us. That's all I got to say.
I really don't have anything else to add besides. No, but seriously though, it does start in the home. I think that we got to be honest about ourselves, and we got to do the research for ourselves as well. One thing that my wife and we've been doing is we've been tracing our lineage back to see where it goes, so we can show our kids that, so they can be proud of that, and get them in front of their grandparents and their great grandparents while they're still alive, so they can have those experiences of sitting down with grandma and Mima and while they're still here, because there's a lot of knowledge there. So, and also we got to look at it, if we don't pressure the school systems to teach the history the way it's supposed to, we get a revisionist history, and our kids become disconnected to their own culture and lineage because they're being told different stuff. So we have to be engaged, not just in platforms like this. We have to go to these school board meetings. We got to see what the teachers are teaching. We got to pay attention to the curriculum that's getting taught in these schools. And if it's not what we want it to be, then guess what? We need to be at those school board meetings. We need to be at town halls and forums and everything else, and raising holy hell so they can change it. Because the only thing I know that politicians move on is fear that they ain't get reelected and money. And we ain't got the money to push them anyway. So all that we can do is fear them out by not voting for them no more and getting people in that are going to do those things. So that's all I got.
Can I have one more thing? If she ain't gonna
Can Morgan go?
Yes, ma'am.
I knew you had a rebuttal when you leaned back.
Yes, ma'am. I was trying to get your attention.
No, I more or less agree, but the other thing that's important to note in terms of holding politicians accountable is recognizing which politicians are not beholden to money. So, for example, in running a grassroots campaign, the only way that I continue to be in office once elected is if the people continue to be with me. Well, that's something that we are seeing at the local level as well. Why don't we have school board candidates that are running grassroots campaign that don't depend on the party blessing them, but depend on people actually coming out and supporting them? City council, same kind of thing. So I do think it requires constant pressure, establishing an agenda, and holding people accountable to it all the time. And then in the meantime, for example, during the campaign, I'm trying to, and my team as well, trying to be out there talking to kids directly, letting them know, like, oh, so have you heard of World War II? Have you heard of the GI Bill? Exactly what Mark was referencing. Do you know that was not available to us, right? And that is no accident that your grandparents weren't able to own a home, and then they weren't able to pass that on to you, and it doesn't just happen that some people are inheriting a couple $100,000 and other people aren't, because home ownership is the main way that people make money in this country. So these are, I think, educating people about the systemic nature of this can empower young people, especially, to recognize their own power.
I just wanted to follow it up, because there was this group, and they might still exist. They're called the Daughters of the Confederates. Y'all ever heard of them? Yeah. They changed the whole curriculum to change the view of America on the Civil War. Now, if they were able to do that, we should be able to get what we need our children to hear about the history, not just black children, but all children in America. We should be able to do that. They determine what should be put in the textbooks, and if the textbook wasn't the right textbook, they got it up out of school. Family, we got a lot of work to do, but it's possible right now. I'm just saying, I'm done.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Yeah, and just one specific example of that, because I'm running a campaign for the 3rd district. It is a very big district. It's gerrymandered. A lot of different types of people to speak to the need of educating lots of different types of people about this issue. And I get a lot of questions. Systemic reparations is on my platform, and from all sorts of people, like, well, why are you talking about that? Well, what is that? Well, how did you get to this point? It's like, read a book. The Color of Law. Have you ever read that book? Do you know the history of residential, segregation and housing discrimination in the U.S.? And this is not just slavery. It started then, but has gone on well into the 21st century. And read that book and let me know how you think we shouldn't be talking about reparations. And I find that to be pretty persuasive. And I do think things like that, there should be almost like a required reading list to be an informed person in this country to then be able to something like that. I mean, it's like, this is not complicated. This is just history. We don't need to study it anymore. All the studies have been completed. If you don't have time to read the studies, look up New York Times 1619 report. That'll just take a little bit of time, and let's get to work and actually implementing an agenda. But I think, people spend a lot of time in the swirl of like, what are you talking about? Well, that's going to be complicated. Well, why are we doing? It's already complicated. So now let's start addressing what's happening.
Okay, so two of you answered wealth as the biggest thing with the state of Black America, and one said housing discrimination. So with regard to the state of the Black economy, how do we close the wage gap?
You want to go first, Adrian?
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
All right.
About to grab something.
Yeah, just because I wanted to be clear. Are we talking about the wage gap, or because
the wage gap, the
right.
fact that African Americans, both male and female, make less on the dollar than their counterparts? How do we close the wage gap?
For me, the reason I was grabbing for something, because the wage gap is important. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's more important to close the wealth gap, because with a wage, what that means is that every 2 weeks I get paid. And if all my payments go out and I don't have any wealth, anything happens, I'm still homeless. You know what I'm saying? Many of us have been, many of us in this room may be a check or two away from being homeless. So rather than the wage gap, if we deal with the wealth gap, I think that the wage gap will have to line up with that. So I think that the appropriate question is, how should we deal with the wealth gap? One of it is because one of the solutions, and this is not the only one, but we have to go and start spending money with each other. But then we got to hold the government responsible for what is owed. And we need to be very clear, because it's not just about us asking for reparations. It's at a point now where we have to demand what we are owed. And some people are going to come to you after we get done talking. They're going to be like, why y'all keep begging for reparations? I got a question for you. Has anybody here ever been late on a payment on anything, and the bill collector called you? When the bill collector called you, do you get on the phone and be like, hey, why you keep begging for your money? The debt is the debt. The debt is the debt, and we need to make sure that we are very vocal about that. All of us, not just the Morgans, because these are rare right now. But we are going to be able to produce a whole lot of these, family. Because what they're doing right now is going to be historic. We are in a historic moment where we are going to be able to change a lot of things in our lives as well as everybody else. Because in the description, and I'm done after this, they always use this description, a rising tide lift all boats. Family, we are the tide. Black folks are the tide. Once it start rising for us, whether we're talking about the wealth gap, all other issues that we have will start disintegrating.
Let Kim Morgan go.
Yeah, she shouldn't go. Yeah, sure.
Well, just on the wage specific, I do agree that an emphasis on wealth is probably more important, but with the whole campaign and the policy issues I talk about, we're kind of thinking of the systemic fixes and also some of the like day-to-day things that are happening, and wages would be one of those things, and discrimination in wages. And so one of the policies I'm backing is Green New Deal. I think a lot of the issues that we're seeing stem from this absolute reliance on the mentality that the market will save us. Well, when the market is also controlling our politicians, trust me, it won't save us, right? And we see the results of that. And so, Green New Deal, for example, one of the things I'm backing that would include a jobs program that would pay living wage jobs, and it's laying out a priority for Black people, other communities of color that has been lacking from other major federal programs. And so that's an important piece there, because then you apply pressure on the market, and the market needs to respond to increased wages, and then it does connect again, and I can't emphasize this enough, to the need to stay organized, electoral power, to also have that power translate into the workplace and have people call out when there is discrimination happening. But I do think applying pressure through different types of jobs being created will also increase wages.
Mark?
Well, I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to kind of be kind of controversial when I say this. The money that we do have, we may need to start looking at transferring it to some other entities and get it out of the market. And the reason why, the reason why I say that is, if we keep relying on the stock market, and we know how they do with the value of the dollar. You have the Fed. They raise interest rates. They lower interest rates. That money, they're basically playing with your money in a pool, and they're basically bidding on themselves. This is how we got into the housing crisis in the first place, because the government was up here just subprime lending to black folks, and they were betting on us being able to pay the money back, right? And after 3 or 4 years, the mortgage rate was skyrocketing. So there was this balloon and people lost wealth. 20 years worth. That's what they said. They estimate black families lost about 20 years of their wealth in the housing crash. But the government didn't bail out the black folks that lost the money. They bailed out the banks that did it. So we may have to start looking at alternative ways to get our money and other resources and get it out of the economy. So we may have to look at, who knows, maybe some offshore banking. Maybe divesting our money and getting it out of banks and making it just straight cash and keeping it, and not allowing people to try to dictate the market for us, and then we turn around and make it, because we got buying power. We got over $1 trillion worth of buying power, and the GDP that's about 3%. So we can really make some strides. But while we're doing that, we also got to look at how the government is disproportionately dealing with wages. They want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, all right? Okay, whoop-de-doo. All right, but what is that going to do for the day-to-day person that's out here working that's already behind their white counterparts? So if you raise my minimum wage to $15, but my white counterpart is making 83% more than what I'm making, so they get $19, I'm making $15, I'm still behind. So raising the minimum wage, yeah, it seems like a good thing on the surface, but how is that going to balance out the wage gap when black women are making 53 cents on the dollar compared to white men? And then they break it down to white women, and it's all this. Hey, we got to stick together. But white women are making more than black women as well too. So like I said, we're at the bottom caste. So we got to look at those things when we're talking about wage inequality. And that's going to have to determine, like, getting more politicians in line and having voted for them to go in and change these bills. So if they beholden to the stock market in Wall Street, then they don't care about you on Black Street. That's the way I look at it.
So you all don't think that increasing our wages will give an opportunity for some type of savings for wealth? You feel that investing black or investing differently and requesting reparations is going to get us on an equal playing field?
I think reparations has to be a part of it because we're already behind. So reparations is more of a buffer, right? It's the level to play. It's actually level the playing field. So we already right now. They said that if the federal government paid reparations out, it's at $17.1 trillion. That's how much wealth was extracted from the black community between slavery, Jim Crow, right now. 17.1 trillion. And the market keeps going up. So if we're sitting at 17.1 trillion, 35 million black people would be eligible for reparations because just 35 million of the 40 million are about descendants of slaves. So you're looking at about 250,000. That's the cash part to get us to put us to right or wrong. But that's not going to settle the debt. There's other stuff that has to happen because we already know if you give us $250,000, somebody gonna go by here and start spending, put it right back in the market where it just came from. So we need some protections. There got to be some financial protections because we know predatory lending happens. It happened in the housing market. It's happening here in Franklin County right now. We got people that are walking around in black neighborhoods, messing with our black elders, trying to buy them out of their houses for little or nothing, and they're turning right back around and making 90%, 100% profit when they just paid my grandmother $20,000 for a house. They turn around and sell it to an investor for $120,000. Like we got to be real about that. So until we get some protections to protect us, then it don't matter how much money you give black folks. All they're gonna do is predatory. They're gonna come with their predatory hands to get it out of us anyway. They need to get it back into the market. So that's why I think that we got to look at other ways to keep the money so it doesn't get recycled back in.
Okay, that leads into the next question of reparations, where you spoke of systemic reparations, and Hatim and Mark, you're speaking of reparations, period. The $250,000 per person, how do you get those protections, and at what level would those protections come from? Are you talking federal, state, local? Okay, and how do you achieve that?
Well, now let me say this: the same way we achieved what happened with the civil rights, step by step. Now, also, it's all about grooming politicians like Morgan, those that are willing to hear what we're talking about and to go into these offices. For example, I think it was you that told me that in 2023. Do y'all know all of the seats for City Council of Columbus is up for grabs? How many of y'all know when we will be eligible to put people on the school board? You know what I'm saying? Right now, this whole system is basically up for grabs with votes. Now, she said in the motto, what's important about the motto that she said? She says, I'm a grassroots candidate. I'm not beholden to any company. She's beholden to us. And as far as we could push her, that's as far as she could go. So family, the question is, we are the change that we've been waiting for. And we need to be able to put ourselves in position so that we can speak for ourselves in these halls, whether we're talking city, whether we're talking state, whether we're talking federal, because we can make all this happen. Right now, I'm working in a school where we got over 500 children. What happens when we start planting seeds with them, and they start looking and wondering, why my grandmama don't own a house, or why we live in this neighborhood, or why my parents can't pay for me to go to college? Why are they depending on me playing football to go to college when I really don't like football? I don't like, we got to get them to start thinking. And that comes with the whole education piece. So we start by educating ourselves, and then also having being bold enough to have the conversations with others, because we're going to make people feel uncomfortable. And we're going to make change, because change don't happen when everybody's comfortable. Right now, the Democratic Party is comfortable with black folks. So this is why they're not really concerned about dealing with us when it comes to reparations, because they're comfortable, because they already know most of y'all gonna vote for us anyway. You know what I'm saying? Y'all done gave them your vote. I already know how y'all vote. I know your voting pattern. You know what I'm saying? So what happens when that shifts? When we start coming and we start having conversations with politicians. Well, who's supporting you? And we start asking questions like that. And we start bringing our children to those city council meetings, and we start getting them to start learning how to ask those questions and be confident. Listen, I'm telling y'all right now, within the next 20 years, if we are serious, we could be running this whole city. One of my goals, and this is just me, one of my goals is to make Columbus one of the first cities to be like, we on board with reparation. By 2020, let's say by 2028, if nobody else has done that yet. City council is up for grabs. What we doing? How many of us in Columbus?
The population.
Yeah.
Like 900.
It's 300,000 of us here. How many people go to the polls on these events?
There's more than 300,000 people in Florida.
Now I'm talking about us.
A third. Well, I know the third district stats. 30% third district. Yeah.
Do we have enough to get at least 3 seats?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm just saying. So maybe it's waiting for us. Mm-hmm. Maybe the solution is waiting for us to decide that enough is enough.
Well, I'll just say on the stats. So the third district, like I said, all in Franklin County, includes most of the areas where we live in this district or in this county because it was gerrymandered because the black vote is safe. And so 90% of the people, though, in the last presidential primary, so that's when voter turnout is higher, when there are also Democratic presidential candidates that are on the ballot, did not vote. People are winning with 10% of people voting. 90%. So when I launched asking me, Morgan, how are you going to run a grassroots campaign and have a chance? It's like, well, 90% of the people haven't spoken. So, I feel like we've got a good shot. And I do think that is a very, very important part of this, is just recognizing the power within and getting organized.
The last election that we just had, the mayor race and all the city council seats, right? Nobody that was in that race got over 100,000 votes. The mayor himself got 85,000, and then people wrote in about 17,000 votes. 17,000 people wrote in somebody. I don't know what they wrote in. Franklin County hasn't put out what they wrote in. But that tells you something, right?
Club, Scott Woods, there was a lot of different.
Yeah, it's just everything, right? Harambe, probably, anything, right? What we got to do is weaponize our vote. And that's what ADOS is about, and our movement has been getting a lot of pushback from political parties. Because they don't want, I saw something on MSNBC to call us a disinformation campaign on MSNBC on Sunday. Because they don't want black people to be woken up to understand that your vote matters. And it should be weaponized. And you should not be giving your vote away just for the sake that you just been voted. Like, if you walk into an election block, and I may need a little time to, because I gotta break this down real quick. So if you walk in and you go into the political polls, right? You go out to your election polls, and you got people outside giving you a card that says, "Hey, vote for these 4 people right here. Vote for this one person right here." Then you're not voting. Okay, you're doing the master's bid. Because you're not voting. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing as an educated black person in the country. You're not vetting people properly. So what happens is when you allow the Democratic Party, you allow the Republican Party to sit up there to weaponize the vote for themselves, then you're giving away everything that our ancestors fought for. They fought for you to have a right to vote, but they didn't fight for you to be a slave to nobody's party. So when you get these people in office, you can't hold them accountable because you just gave your vote away, and you didn't read anything in the when they come out with the booklet for the, what is it called, Tiffany? What's the booklet called that has all the questions that they ask the candidates?
The
voter's guide, yeah.
The voter guide. You're not reading the voter guide, but you got a slate card that says this is the official ballot for the Democratic Party. And you just go right in there with the little ballot. I was outside watching people because I was out there campaigning for people to say, hey, no, we need to stop this. Y'all don't go in there and vote for these folks. Do you know this person here is getting endorsed by the Democratic Party, but they also getting endorsed by the FOP. These people out here killing us, and y'all about to go ahead and vote for these folks, and y'all don't even know what it is. What's the FOP? You don't know the Fraternal Police? But you about to go ahead and vote for these people. And then they get in office, and they're not beholden to you. They're beholden to the FOP. So when another black man gets shot in this city, we want to go marching in the streets. But it's too late because you had the opportunity not to put that person in office in the first place. So we got to weaponize our vote, and we got to be able to vet candidates like they're supposed to, so we can get grassroots people like Morgan in office. Because guess what? When she gets in office, she's not beholden to a corporate entity or Wall Street or whoever, pharmaceutical companies, whatever. She's beholden to the voters. And we can go there and say, hey, Morgan, why did you vote like this? Why did you vote on this bill like this? But we can't do that. We can't do that and we just sitting up here just showing up on election day with a card that we got in the mail from the Democratic or the Republican Party and say, okay, well, I'm just going to go vote for these folks. I don't know nothing about them. Don't vote. No, you're doing more damage by voting for people that you voted against your own interests and you don't even know it. So you might as well just stay at home.
Okay, Mark.
No, I'm sorry. I'm
We
sorry.
can go ahead and get into voters.
I'm sorry. Hey,
No,
that's.
no,
I'm sorry.
That was my next topic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You forgot yourself. That's okay.
Yeah, I got a little socks though. I got a little socks.
No, it's exactly. So, how many people have heard of sample ballot here? Just curious. Okay, that's pretty high. And so the sequence of events is, and it happened in this last local election, though there were multiple types of Democrats running who are all declared Democrats, some of whom on more progressive platforms, some who were talking about police brutality. The three-step process is mailers going out throughout the city to let people know that these are your endorsed Democratic candidates. And to Mark's point, endorsed by what standard, right? Because the first question on that screening questionnaire or whatever is, are you a card-carrying member of the Democratic Party or whatever, you know? Oh, what is that? What does that have to do with it? Okay, fine. First step, mailers. Second step, commercials that feature the endorsed Democratic candidates. These are the Democrats that you should be voting for. Again, by what standard? For whom? What are we talking about? And then the final step of this exercise of absolute manipulation of people, not letting them know that they have other Democratic candidates who are running on platforms that would be more responsive to the needs of the community, is the sample ballot given up at the polling station, letting you know that, again, here are your friendly endorsed Democratic candidates by no criteria that anybody, I believe, in this room would really care about. So that is why in this race that we're running, like I said, gerrymandered district, meaning it's safely Democratic. There will be a primary on March 17th. It is going to be 2 Democrats. There should be no endorsement. Endorsement and screening is a method of manipulating people into not understanding their choices, not spending time educating the electorate about the different policy positions between candidates, and it's a way to make sure that the same people keep winning. It is a travesty, and I'm not standing for it. So I actually declined to screen, and instead I'm asking the party, and I encourage everyone here too to reach out to the Franklin County Democratic Party, assuming you are a member of that party, and letting them know endorsements don't serve us, and we deserve to have debates where we are featuring candidates, talking about issues, and coming up with an agenda that is actually going to invest in our communities that are on the brink.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so there's a lot of voter suppression that we read about across the United States. Do you believe that there is voter suppression in Ohio, or particularly Franklin County since we're in Columbus? And how do we address that suppression and overcome it?
I think so. We just talked about it. Sample balloting is a form of voter suppression because it allows the electorate to be swung a certain way for certain people. And when we think about the term voter suppression, we always think about getting your vote taken away or policies that stop people from registering to vote, right? But we don't talk about the policies that manipulate voters into voting a certain way. That is the other form of voter suppression. And, you know, we saw the purging of the rolls here. I don't think that we don't have people like convicted felons not knowing that they have the right to vote.
Can you repeat that?
So convicted felons who are not incarcerated not knowing that they have the right to vote. Because as soon as you get out of prison, you have the right to vote again. You don't have to worry about serving out parole and being off of probation before you can vote. As soon as you leave out of those walls, you have the right to vote again. So I think that as voters, we have to go out in our communities and get these people to vote. Because the one thing that I know for sure is that elections are won by 1 or 2 votes. I just saw a city council article out of Boston. A lady won a city council seat with 1 vote. She won by 1 vote. 1 vote. So that meant that if everybody in this room stayed at home, she wouldn't be a city council member. You know, so if we stay at home, we allow voter suppression to happen because we are allowing people to run and win offices with 10% of the electorate. And they're speaking for 100% of everybody, but got elected by 10%. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we have to encourage our community people. We have to talk to our families. Are you registered to vote? No. Why not? Get registered to vote. Because we can't demand change from the government if we just completely checked out of the political process. So we have to get back engaged and get our people. We don't have to march down the street and yell and have signs and picket. No, we picket at the polls. That's where you should be voting. That's where you should make your voice heard at. And if we keep allowing ourselves to be manipulated by not voting or voting a particular way, then you can't complain when things don't go your way.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, actually, now I'm
Okay.
I had something to say.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Voter suppression.
Right.
On the so yes, thank you. Okay, sorry, I was
He got you all frazzled.
No.
no, I was just so enraptured by what Mark was saying. So, no, I do think that this felony point is very important. I can't
Very.
tell you how many people I meet while campaigning, particularly, in the 3rd District, particularly among not even young black men, also older black men who are being released from the system, that have shame around the fact that they have a felony on their record. I try to assuage people, don't worry, every other person I meet has a felony on their record, right? And by the way, that's probably due to a system that was created for you to fail, but we have agency right now to change things. And so we have to get that message out. I actually was campaigning in Whitehall, and there was a young man who was working at a food truck, and I was like, introducing myself, I'm running for Congress, and his employer at the food truck intervenes to say, stop talking to her, you have a felony, you can't vote anyway. I was like, that is wrong, okay? And this is the type of thing that's happening. And I just happen to see that. Only imagine the things that are happening all the time. And people saying this is just like Florida and you can't vote. So that is a really important message to get out there, because I also think we need to be investing more in the training that people are getting while incarcerated to set people up for success upon release.
You don't have anything?
They said it all.
Okay.
That felony piece is a big one.
Do
for me.
you feel that civic engagement by either ADOS or other African American organizations will not only educate our voters, but also get them engaged to the point that they'll actually go and vote? Because there's an 18 to 30 demographic of young people that do not vote. They feel that their voice is not going to be heard. And then you have those that are 40 to 55, a lot of folks coming out of incarceration that also feel the same way, not because they weren't informed, but because of the treatment that they received when they were incarcerated.
Now, I believe that a lot of people, once again, not only they're incarcerated, but a lot of us may have feared, because let me speak for me. Let me say I statement. I felt that my voice was not being heard. And I know I have a lot of peers that feel exactly the same way. But I no longer have that luxury. And we got to make sure that everybody understands that they no longer have the luxury. Because now what we're fighting for those 3-year-olds, this young lady right here. That's what we got to realize that we are responsible for, because what we do in this moment carves out the space for them to exist. Family, I want you to think about where we're going to be if we don't have wealth in this country. It's bad enough now. You imagine it's bad now. I want you to think about that. Now, those black organizations have a responsibility, and we belong to them. We have the responsibility to push them. Because I know in the church they can't cover this because they lose their 501c3s, but they're in the schools and all these black organizations that we have to all go within these organizations and start pushing them to start getting people to understand that it is your responsibility. And if you don't want to vote for yourself, loan your vote to your children or to your nieces and your nephews. Because what we do in these coming elections between now and 2024, De La Soul says, the stakes are high, family. The stakes are high, and we're giving it away.
I think the organizations like ADOS, we've carved out our space, and we just getting started. But we're going to need the NAACP, the Urban League, NAN, and all these other organizations that want to be in this space too, to actually play ball and do what they're supposed to be doing. Because I think a lot of them have been, they've been co-opted. And we know, especially in the black community, we know what happens. You have a movement, Some people start bringing you some money, and then you shut up. And that has happened over and over and over again. We get co-opted and get destroyed. So now, once they rendered you powerless, then your voice is no longer their concern because you beholden to them now. So if we're going to take back these institutions, even the church, because there's a lot of pastors out here that are endorsing candidates that shouldn't be doing it. And they do it anyway, and nobody says anything. And they get up in their pulpits, and the people that sit in the pulpits, if you challenge that pastor, you ain't gonna talk to my pastor like that. You ain't gonna be talking about my pastor like that. Well, they sitting up there giving endorsements to candidates, and they don't even know anything about them. So I asked the question: are they getting kickbacks? They taking tax cuts or something, because it makes no sense for you to be sitting up there in that space because you're in a center of influence. And so we have to take back the church. We got to take back our education system. We got to take back the black businesses. We got to take back all these things. We got to take back our communities too. We got to be on the streets when we're talking about these issues. So we got to take back the streets too. We just can't just rely on the government to do everything. We got to go into our communities and take these back, because if not, we're gonna be gentrified out of them. And it's already happening here in Central Ohio. You see it all throughout. You can go on King Lincoln, it don't look the same no more. And I ain't been here for 2 years, and I can tell the difference. You go off of Linden. You go off of Linden. They got $25 million about to get invested in that. And ain't no black businesses getting none of that money. So in about 2 to 3 years, Linden gonna be looking just like Grandview Heights if we don't turn it around. So I think that we gotta challenge the NAACP and all these rest of these organizations to get on board, and they can come partner with us. We want to get into these organizations and help shape it out, because I think that they lost their ways over these years, and I think they're just taking a lot of corporate money, and then they doing corporate bidding, and they fooling black folks thinking that they out here fighting for you when they not.
So I think another critical component of this is, especially among a lot of people in I'm going to venture my age cohort to distinguish from the other panelists, is that it's no longer acceptable that I'm okay and that alone. So, take, for example, this economic equation. I personally, yes, I got this crazy amount of opportunity to go to places like Princeton and Stanford, and I am economically okay. But that's not okay, because I still see people that I know that are not okay. I walk down the street and see people that are suffering, and there are a lot of people like me in our age group that are thinking that way, and that is a real opportunity, because when you start thinking about the coalitions that we need to build, it has to be some people that are willing to, even if they are okay, recognize that we're all connected in this, and we have to build together, and it's not just about self-preservation and getting into a social club, it's about justice. And I do think that is starting to click for people, and that's what we build off to actually get legislative, electoral, political change.
Audience a question, since Mark brought up the NAACP. How many people are members of the NAACP?
Wow.
Damn.
Is there a reason why no one else is? That's the power that we're not using.
Well,
it is, because if there were individuals that are in this realm, and if there were individuals, if every one of you were members of the NAACP, you have voting power to vote in your NAACP leadership. Just food for thought. Next question.
Well, it sounded like, I think maybe Ms. Hood had a comment. Yeah.
I'm glad you did.
Go ahead, Amy.
It lasted 20 minutes.
I'm Adrian Hood. Number one, there was someone that did try and run against Ms. Watson, and they did her terrible, and that's not okay. I went to the meeting last night, and Ms. Watson decided that that was the time to talk about the pictures that I posted with her standing there with Quinlan, with her standing there with Ronald Bryan, and she decided to bring that out there. Thanks be to God for him being my keeper. because it almost got bad last night. But I did send them a very detailed email today. And I told them that I would see them soon. So, back to the question of why some of us are not members of the NAACP is because it's another organization where we are powerless because of the individuals that are sitting in the seats and they bully people and to not move them out of them.
There's someone else that has a statement or a question.
Member of the NAACP because they have had systemic problems from the state level down for years. I mean, I was personally there when they elected a new slate, and then we didn't get a new slate because they decided that election was invalid. So it's a conscious decision.
Same thing with me. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Same issue. You go to those meetings and you see how organized we can be. You see the potential and how we're not maximizing that potential. You see the classism. You see a lot of structural things. And I'm sorry. And my problem, holistically, is that we feed off white validation and white approval and everything else. Your white friends, your white peer, your white lover. There's not real self-love to the point where I feel comfortable like joining some of these parties.
You know, I want you to understand, when we hear about the national advancement for the colored people, NAACP, national advancement for colored people, we forget that Joel Spingarn was the first president of the NAACP. He was a white man. When you look at the official documents of the early founders, it said it was a biracial group focused, and we talked about Black Buff earlier, on non-economic liberalism. Go back and read the founding documents of the NAACP. When we're talking about wealth, the wage gap and everything, it goes clearly down to that. It's not like the NAACP was patterned after the Afro-American League. If the which the NAACP replaced, the Niagara Conference replaced the Afro-American League. We're not following Thomas T. Fortune. We're not following Martin Delaney. We're not following Booker T. We are following a biracial organization. For years, the NAACP has been controlled and run by white folks since its very founding. And W. Boyce was not a founder. He was an editor of a magazine called The Crisis. We got to also stop talking myth. He was just a participant in the Niagara Conference, just like many of our leaders of that day. Yeah. So at the time, and then we also got to go back to who I'm thinking of right now, but I'll let it go. But yeah, we also got to go back. I'll let it go for right now.
Yeah, that's fine, brother.
Thank you.
You know what? I agree
I know
with
you
what the
do.
brother said. Let me just say this. The purpose of a baseball bat is to play a baseball game.
Yes.
But I can also use that bat to beat you down with it. So what we have to learn how to do is how to infiltrate even what they have put out here. I totally agree with you. And whatever their purpose is, and I've been involved in the ACP, and y'all know that, yeah, anyway. But what happens is that we can all disagree with each other about history, about this, or about that. But every time we ride down that road, it was politics that paved that road, and it was our money.
That's right.
No matter who you talking about and what you dealing with, you Muslim, Christian, Jew, Moor, Black, whatever. But the reality to it is that NAACP can be used for a different purpose. If revolutionaries, we're going to take the damn thing over. The problem is we won't go take it over. The police department is our shit. Take it over. We keep talking about them, and you're going to work and pay them to be your ass. Take it over. Let it be our thing. Listen, been to Africa in this room? My people in Africa, I'm on the phone with them, and there's a white Jesus hanging on the wall. And we think Africa free? Minister Farrakhan said the difference between black people in America and black folks in Africa is people in Africa think they free. But they had to be controlled before slavery could even exist. So our problem is we don't understand counter-espionage. So you got to infiltrate. I'll give you an example. I see all the black revolutionaries in this room that got opinions. I ask people all the time. I'm going to ask you here, and I'm going to let this mic drop. No, I'm just kidding. How many black grocery stores do we have in Columbus? And if you don't answer this because you talk to me, please do not say nothing. How many black grocery stores we got in this city? Tell us how many?
None.
One? None?
None.
Where is my grandfather from? Does anybody know?
Panama. No. Puerto Rico.
No.
No?
That's what part of my family's from.
Okay.
My great-grandfather is from a city
You said grandfather. You tricked me.
My
Go ahead.
great-grandfather, Hargeisa. He's from Hargeisa, Somalia. My daughter, 13 years old, she speaks fluent Somali. Is she black or is she Somali? She a black woman. So, how many black grocery stores we got? Somalis are black, Ethiopians are black, Senegalese are black, Jamaicans are black. Do you understand what's happening here? Mama, where are you from?
Trinidad.
Trinidad. She's black. So what I'm saying is that we keep talking about we revolutionary. We won't even go to the black grocery stores because we don't even think we got one or none in Columbus. How the hell can we build wealth if we're ignoring the fact that we all family in the first damn place? No, we have been divided, but my point I'm making is we'll drive right past people.
Can I rebuttal?
So my point, here's where I'm at. The NAACP, any of these organizations out here, we have got to go find. Now watch this, because everybody know your team. There's revolutionaries from Somalia. There's revolutionaries from Guinea. There's revolutionaries from all kinds of places all over the world. And guess where they live? Right here. So look at what we can be. Stan Filippo's white truck pulls up to all the African stores to sell them groceries. And Hatim's school is growing food right in the cafeteria. Who could you begin to sell your food to fund your school? I'm just saying. So the NAACP, we don't have the power because those of us with power refuse to go join and give it the power it needs. Let's get up off our asses and quit talking, infiltrate these organizations. The first FBI agent, black FBI agent in the United States, was assigned to the Marcus Garvey movement. So if they infiltrated us, why the hell? And when they whoop our asses, I'm going to tell you this, we act like they invisible. And when the Ku Klux Klan came to Columbus, Ohio in 1997, anybody old enough to remember? We took 3 busloads of black people to the Grand Wizard's house in Coshocton. And the Klan has never been back to the state capitol since then. Go to his house. Go see where Becky played. And I bet you his ass act right when he get that cruiser tomorrow. If you know where he living, where he go to church. I'm just tired of all the damn complaining. Either get your ass up and do something, join these organizations, go make it happen, or don't do it. And I tell them, I was in law enforcement. And I tell them quite publicly, I'll come and see you. You kill my son.
Okay.
So let's join this together. Let's revolutionaries.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mark has a few comments,
and I
we're
agree.
going to move on.
Yeah, I agree with you, brother. I agree with you. You said that we all black, right? And we need to be doing things together. We should be having this coalition of black folks, no matter where you're from, right? The issue that I have with that, and I'm gonna be frank, is that don't nobody want to be African American. All right. So we can talk about coalition building, we can talk about nation building, but when it comes time to put the rubber meets the road, I ain't seeing no Nigerians. I ain't seeing no Eritreans. I ain't seeing no whatever come into the hood and come out and fight for me. Now, and the reason why is because when they come here,
They do it with me.
well, I ain't seen them, my brother. And the
So
reason
we obviously ain't talking to each other.
and that's the problem. That's the problem.
But
And
all
we,
black people in America ain't rocking with you either. So
Right.
we got to go find the revolutionaries everywhere.
and see the problem with that is that
There's not a problem with
well, it is a problem. And here's the problem. Here's the problem,
But when
brother.
the Klan pass out ropes, everybody black.
Yeah, and that is the way it is, right? But here's the problem with black folks, right? When it comes down to it, don't nobody want to be African American unless they're getting protected or getting shot. That's when you want protection. But when it comes down to whether you want to be living with us, whether you want to be engaging with us, whether you want to be in our communities, they don't want to be in those communities. I'm in the military. I've been all over the world, and I have seen how the diaspora treats black Americans. I'm talking about natives. I'm talking about those who descend from slaves. They have a whole different idea about us. Because when they come to the country, before they go through the embassy, they get culturally conditioned before they get here.
You got the white Jesus on the wall, like you mentioned.
So when they get here, they already thinking that. So we are used as a springboard to something else. And that's not saying that we can't nation build and get with them and do.
Somalians in the corner right now.
Okay, that's fine.
Should we put them out?
No. That ain't what we saying.
Okay, I think
No, brother.
That ain't what we saying, Pastor.
I'm not saying that.
Mark,
Yeah.
Mark. Okay.
And
I think that's enough dialogue
Somali,
on that
not
particular
Somali.
thing. I think the overall tone is, if you're not going to be a part of the solution, quit complaining about the problem. Whether you agree with the NAACP or not, any organization can change if you put people in place to make that change.
Yeah.
But you got to have the numbers. I can't stand alone by myself when I'm telling you something's happening in our community or in our neighborhood. If I'm standing alone, they're going to say it's Tiffany's problem, not everybody else's problem. So I think that's what the underlying theme of that dialogue was.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to the next question.
Well, I just
Oh,
want
you
one thing
smooth.
to
That
add.
was smooth.
So,
That was smooth.
and just so everyone heard, I hope heard Somali, not Somalian. Okay. And then also, I will say through the campaign, we're actually engaging with a lot of different communities that make up the 3rd District. And I do think that there are a lot of different perspectives on that you have people coming from immigrant communities that acknowledge exactly what Mark is saying and also want to be real about that and build together and advocate for a black agenda. And so, I don't think we should cast
Come
too
along,
wide of a net, but I do
Come on, let's
understand
fight
where Mark is
together.
coming from.
Let's get this bag.
Let's not use slang.
Come along.
Okay, if the election were to happen tomorrow, who would be your Democratic candidate and why?
Ooh. Can I answer that?
I will let them.
Because she's a candidate. She's a candidate.
You mean
No, you're talking about president.
Presidential?
I'm not
candidate.
Oh,
If
president.
it
Go ahead.
happened tomorrow, who
Go
would
ahead.
be your Democratic candidate and why?
I haven't heard any Democrats really support reparations. So I will be voting down ballot. I will be making sure that stuff is supposed to be the way it is in Columbus. And since she's going to be on the ballot and she has vocally supported reparations, she will receive my vote. Right? I'm not giving it away.
So you won't vote for a presidential candidate?
Oh, my fault. But now, is Marianne Williamson on there? Will she be on there? Because
I don't think she's going to.
right. Because I was right. You know. But she said something about if she was on there, she could give my vote because she supported reparations. Now, but right now, the major ones that's running, down ballot for me.
So you would not vote for a presidential candidate?
No, I'll put in.
Tomorrow?
I'll probably write in something. Maybe because what was some of the names that you said was put in on the ballot when?
Scott Woods.
No, Mickey Mouse Club.
That wasn't valid because that's not a person. That's
Right.
yeah.
ADOS. I just want them to know that we in the house.
Yeah.
That would be invalid too.
What
'cause
about
that's-
Ron Daniels?
Who?
Why didn't Ron Daniels?
Are you Ron Daniels?
No.
Yeah.
There's a.
What about Ron Daniels when he was doing his grassroots campaigns in the early 90s, when he was writing votes for president? when he was going for a black agenda.
Do
The black
you,
agenda we're talking about was already presented by Ron Daniels.
does Ron Daniels want to be our president?
He ran for president service out. In other words, back in the day, remember that line every put out?
I remember.
The president I voted for Shirley Chisholm.
Yes.
We can still write in people even if they're not running. But if you want to vote your values, Ron Daniels is a good example of as a write-in vote. If you know our political history.
Thank you.
As of right now, no. I'm not voting for any of these people. I have no faith in these presidential candidates because they have not presented an agenda that appeals to me. And the reason why is because they so concerned about everything else except a black agenda. And they wondering why the enthusiasm among black voters is so low. Because they're not even talking to black folks. See, they get on TV and they get people like, Joy Reid and everybody else on MSNBC. They say that they got people coming on their show that are these quote-unquote analysts, right? These quote-unquote people that have the ear to the streets. But they're not talking to people like myself and High Tim. I don't know where they're going. They're going to the NAACP and they're going to see Al Sharpton and sitting down for hot sauce and buying fried chicken and watermelon at the Iowa eating pork chops at the Iowa Fair. That's what they're doing. So they're not talking to real black folks. They're not coming to the grassroots. They're not doing what Morgan's doing. They're not going out door to door knocking on talking to people. They're showing up for photo ops. So as long as they keep doing photo ops, I'm gonna keep voting down ballot. Because I think it's important for us not to give our vote away, and I said that earlier. Because if you go in there and you go vote for somebody, then they're not beholden to you for anything. So I think we need to make a statement. Either A, play ball, have a black agenda, or you get no vote. And that's what my t-shirt says. No black agenda, no vote. And I mean that. I mean that wholeheartedly because we cannot be beholden to anybody that's not going to do the bidding for us as well. We matter. 35 million of us, 40 million of us are in this country. We matter, and we keep voting, and every time our issues keep getting kicked down the road, kicked down the can. HR 40, if y'all don't know what it is a bill on reparations. It's been in the House for 30 years. 30 years. 30 years.
John Conyers put that out in 1971.
And here's the thing, it ain't went nowhere. Nowhere. This is the first time that they've had an actual hearing on the actual bill since 2010. And they didn't even have a hearing. Nobody knew about it. It's still in the judiciary. But I can see all kind of other bills come flying out of there. I see stuff on DACA. I see stuff on immigration. I see stuff on I see impeachment articles for anything. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm just saying I ain't voting for none of them, basically.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I thought that was going to be like a one.
Quick one, no.
Quick answer.
Morgan. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the policies that I have included on our platform in the campaign do match with what some of the candidates are talking about. So I do think a big step to getting to the place where you can launch, your own business in addition to having potentially like capital injections that are coming from systemic reparations would be making sure you have healthcare and we're not beholden to employers providing that keeps us trapped in jobs that we might not like. Making sure that people have also stable housing. And, and some of the candidates are also talking in a very real way about federal policies that will address police violence. And so, I'm happy to see that coming to the top of the agenda as well.
So you also don't have if you were to vote for a president tomorrow, all three of you wouldn't vote for anyone at this point? You don't have a candidate that sticks out your hand?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I was just referencing some of the policies.
Oh, okay.
No.
That's the question.
But I think they did say that.
No, don't say that for her. For me and him,
no.
For us,
So
no black
you wouldn't
agenda.
vote for anyone.
No.
So in essence, your vote would go to Trump.
Well, I mean, you could.
Well,
if that
I
make you
can't-
wait,
No.
hold on.
That's you said no.
Right.
Morgan
I
is the only
mean,
one
so
who
they
gave
got
the answer.
let her have an argument. She can have
Yeah.
it because we're gonna have an argument about that. So if that's what you say,
No, it's not to have an argument. It's to say this is the exact same thing that happened 4 years ago. Whether you didn't like
See,
Hillary
but-
or
here's the
or
thing.
you wanted Bernie to be
Yeah.
your Democratic candidate.
Here's
There
the
were
thing,
a large proportion of African Americans that did not choose to vote. I need you to put your mic down, Mark, because the only person that can answer this question right now is Morgan because she didn't answer it.
Okay.
You said you wouldn't vote for anyone. He said he wouldn't vote for anyone. I got to keep it moving.
No, she says she's not. She says she's not going to detail who she will vote for. So she did answer the question.
There's still a lot of people in the race.
So that's no as well. So tomorrow.
No, she didn't say no.
No.
She didn't say no.
Words in my mouth.
That's what they want to know. Who is it? Or who's it? Who are your?
Don't go like
Uno, dos, tres. Who's eating, meeny, miny, mo? You can give me 3. No? Okay.
She hasn't made up her mind yet.
So we'll go to the next question, which is criminal justice reform. I was going to do housing, but let's talk about criminal justice reform. I think we all are in agreement that the 13th Amendment is a form of slavery. But how do we address mass incarceration and police accountability? I'm kind of lumping them together because we got to get moving. Mm-hmm. And you really do only get 3 minutes this time.
I'm sorry.
So, working with some people in the community, including Ms. Hood, who's here, we actually added public safety to the platform. That's really focused on police violence. I do think one of the reasons why we are seeing mass incarceration is because we have an over-policing of our communities and laws that are set up to trap a lot of people into ending up in that situation. And so starting to rethink how we approach public safety, including the community in incidents of police violence, increasing data collection that's happening at the federal level, so there is an ability to identify patterns. Take the 3rd District, for example. We spend a lot of time in the community talking about the Columbus Police Department, but Whitehall is in this district, Reynoldsburg is in this district. I don't hear a lot of better cases of things happening, particularly for young black men and, mostly young black men in these communities. And so I think we need to have federal solutions that are getting at national policies that are going to prevent incidents of police violence, and that is something that can be done at the federal level. Like I said, some of the presidential candidates are talking about it. We should also be pushing for that in Congress in this House seat.
Once again, one of the major solutions is reparations. I'm just saying, because if you look at where crime is high, is where people don't have wealth. We don't have wealth, so of course it's focused on that. Now, along with reparations, we need to do the whole educational piece that we started with when we started this conversation. So, education, and us getting our story in there, as well as reparations, because a lot of the crimes that we're going to jail for don't happen in communities with wealth. I'm saying.
I think it goes deeper than that. I agree with Hatem on this one and more than. I really think that when it comes to criminal justice reform, we got to look at who we electing into office. Right now in Columbus, we got a police chief. Police chief that's about to be hired. I think that is really going to be indicative on the state of how policing happens as far as black communities is concerned. Because if we get the wrong police chief, who's not beholden to citizens, then we get incidents where young black men are being shot and killed, and there is no repercussions. We get situations like down in Texas with both of John and Amber Guyger's sentence. If that would have been a black man that had killed a white woman, mistakenly just came in the house and said, I thought this was my house. He's not getting 5 years. He's probably getting life in prison. And in Texas, he's probably getting the needle. So we gotta be truthful and honest about this, because I think that when we look at these politicians, we gotta figure out who they beholden to. Because if we keep letting, and that's why right now, if you're not calling the mayor office every single day, demanding that Perry Tarrant is the new police chief and not the interim police chief Quinlan, then you're doing a disservice to the black community. Because if you would have been at that candidate forum that we were at, you would have heard the things that Perry Tarrant wants to install. That's what I'm talking about, being politically engaged. Because if we sit back and allow Columbus to do what they're gonna do, Columbus is gonna do what they're gonna do. And we've had 27 years ago, you had the report. You had a matrix report. DOJ comes in and says, this is what we need to do. And none of that stuff gets implemented. Consent decrees. Who's the police chief? See what I'm saying? So if you got somebody that's a change agent, guess what? We gotta demand change, and that requires us to be engaged in not just that. And I think that goes to everything else. So I think it kind of works itself out when we vote in the right folks.
Okay, thank you. There's a gentleman in the back. Do you want to make a comment before they finish, or you want to make it now?
If I can make a comment.
Sure, absolutely.
So,
Get the mic, bro.
check. I would definitely say there needs to be a private, independent investigation of all political, and legal and policing mechanisms within the United States across the board. Which means that it's easy to do. You just go to their social media pages and see if they're involved into hate groups, which are also identified as terrorist cells of organizations, which domestic terrorism is the word of the day. But we must also identify our true enemy in this conversation, since we're talking about ADOS. Who is our enemy? White supremacy, which is an ideology, okay, an inferiority complex by narcissistic mental health patients en masse that were bred into this ideology, and then also the mental health of African Americans who deal with cognitive dissonance, Stockholm syndrome, and other different forms of systemic trauma that was unaddressed in their family culture. All of these things are dealing with the sustainability and the longevity of white civility, which is now challenged because now there's such an access to information in real time. We don't have the excuse of I don't know when you have an $800 computer in your phone. So really quickly, I don't want to take up too much of the time. There's some things I don't want to say, but I took down some notes, but I don't want to go too long-winded with this, but I do want to say that we collectively in this room have power economically and socially. But our biggest thing is ourselves. We have to work together and agree on something, guys. You know, at the end of the day, if you're looking at Trump as your problem, we had racist presidents before. And it never stopped any one of us from making $1. Now, I'm not looking at Billy, who's sitting next to me and saying, I'm making $1.15 and you're making $2. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to do what I need to do and take advantage of the opportunities until things change. But all it takes is for you to give some money to Morgan, you to move your money to a black institution that holds your funds, while we're giving our way to white-owned institutions that do not have our best interest involved. But then there's that thing. We're dealing with mental health here behind all of this, because all this action and talk is meaningless if we don't agree and take action. So all I can say is that while we need to investigate our police forces and everything else, black and white, because those are the same people who are posturing for these white supremacists, and they want the opportunity to be close to them, live in the neighborhoods, have a certain bag like them, or anything, because we have self-hate. We're programmed to hate ourselves, and it has worked to their advantage for such a long time. We need to subtract the emotion, organize, and be very, very, very passionate. Just as we are passionate about these conversations, be passionate in our actions to work together. That's it.
Thank you so much. Do you have one you want to answer that question?
No, I think you agree.
Okay. All right, so there's
Another question.
Another
One
question.
last question.
sure.
I'm
Can you
new
give
to
me the
Ohio, just like that gentleman right there, and I'm struggling with finding black spaces, places where we can go have these conversations without white people around, because I think a lot of these conversations are being had, and you have white people in the space, and it does us no good. So I just want to link with people in the community here in Ohio to where I can have engaging conversations with like my peers, so I can learn about what we're doing here to support black businesses.
So ADOS will be having a meeting Sunday
Yes,
at
yes, brother.
Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church. So
Get with me, brother.
if you get with him, I know they're also doing listening tours. They're going to go to each side of town and hopefully meet in churches. So I know the first one will probably be in Linden. Ms. Hood is making her church available for us. So I guess what we need to do is make sure everyone has some type of contact, whether that's an email address or a phone number, so that when these things come up, when we have our listening sessions or meetings, everyone can get the information.
Yeah.
And you don't have to Eventbrite it. We'll just let you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that? I want to make sure that I it's open to anybody. Okay, I just want to make sure that you understand that it's not just. We want to bridge the diaspora to work together. So if you want to come out, Macedonia Church is in Oakwood on Oakwood Avenue, 3 p.m. on Sunday. We're doing once a month, and then we're going to start these listening sessions throughout. Like we have in the state of Black America, we're going to have a state of everything else that's going on around this city, because I think that we can make real change. But that's going to require brothers like yourself to come out. Myself, hi Tim, my man Butch. It ain't a lot of us. It ain't a lot of brothers stepping up to the plate. Like we allowing females to lead, and I have no problem with that. But I need some brothers in the space too. You know what I'm saying? We need some brothers to step up, and because we can be in here and be braggadocious and boast and brag and get all huff puff and be tough. But then we get out in these streets and we quiet as mouse. So we can do it in these spaces. We got to do it in these people's faces. So
absolutely. So we also need to be conscious that there are people that do want to support the Black agenda and the Black causes. So we don't ever want to exclude anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes it is an education. I went to an event a month ago, and it was about educating our counterparts on our traumas. So it was a good meeting and conversation. So I think it goes both ways. I guess wrapping up, healthcare and housing are two of the biggest social determinants that determine whether we're successful or not in life. Whether our life be shortened because of illness or whether we don't have stability. We have been over several decades in the Black community living with devalued property in our communities, redlining, gentrification, homelessness. How do you address the housing situation as well as the health care as when it comes to African Americans? He held something up. I have no idea what that is.
The time.
Time. Okay.
We only got a couple seconds.
So, as I mentioned before, I'm backing something called Medicare for All. What that gets at is just the principle that everyone should have access to health care. We currently are in an employer-based system, so it depends on often your employer offering you health care, and then if you don't, you can go to the exchanges through the Affordable Care Act. This system isn't working because it hasn't achieved that everyone has health care, right? And it's actually a historical anomaly that we even find ourselves in this situation where we depend on companies, again, the market, to decide that they want to offer us health care. That was only because after World War II, wages were frozen, and the way you competed for labor was to offer benefits, and healthcare became one of those benefits. So it used to be the case that you had even Republicans that were advocating for universal health care because it's actually a very rational, economically efficient policy that we are behind every other major industrialized nation in this entire world in doing. So I think that is a very important thing to accomplish, and there's movement building to do it.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't get to housing.
Oh, can you do housing real quick?
Okay. I thought it was being pretty quick.
No.
Okay.
I had an housing. That's okay.
And then on housing,
I make it mark last.
Yeah. So the situation we have has flipped over a generation. It used to be that most people were homeowners. Now, over 60%, especially people in the Black community, are renting. That leaves you in the hands of landlords, property owners that get to do whatever they want. And connected to a lot of the things we already discussed, the legacy of property ownership is completely unfair in this country, here in Central Ohio, and that isn't a good place to be. So one immediate solution that I think we should be advocating for is national rent stabilization that would put some bounds on how much you can profit off of just providing folks with a basic need, which is housing, and there's movement building towards that as well, in addition to increasing the supply of housing. Now, when we talk about systemic reparations, it's a challenge to think creatively about what exactly that looks like beyond, direct cash.
It's not that.
Should we be waiving property taxes for people in formerly redline communities who are homeowners? Because that's often what is leading to displacement. The property values are finally rising in an area that has been disinvested in for a generation, and now instead of being in a position to capture some of that wealth, you have older folks who are getting pushed out because they can't keep up with the increased property taxes. What is that, right? That is crazy. We should just waive that. But first of all, we shouldn't even have people probably at that age even paying taxes who are in some of these communities, and certainly not property taxes being the way that they are not able to get an asset to then pass on to the next generation.
Hot Tim, do you have anything on healthcare or housing? Or both?
Just the common thread with what Brother Hatem is talking about is family. The key point is reparations as far as black people. And I have to stick to that. We have to be honest about it, that we are going to have to force these people to pay what they owe. We got to force this country to pay what they owe.
Okay.
That's the United States of America. United States of America, because if you trace slavery back, slavery was sanctioned by the United States of America, supported by the United States of America, defended by the United States of America. So we have a legal justice claim, a justice claim that we have to push. So I think everybody knows what I say, and I want to be clear. I'm not saying sue white supremacy. I'm saying take our claim to the United States of America. And also, we look at some of the stuff that's been going on in Columbus, and we deal with Columbus as Columbusites. You know what I'm saying? But then on a national level, we have to be bold enough to take it and say, pay what you owe.
Thank you, Mark.
On the issue of housing, that's near and dear to my heart. I think that we have community leaders have to be out in the communities and recognize what's going on in our communities when it comes to the gentrification era. Right? We got to stop that. I love beautifying the area, but if it's gonna let my grandmother and my granddad out of their house, then I don't want it. So I'm all for national rent control as well. I think it's a real good thing because I don't think that you should be able to double up on a house. When me and my wife were moving from North Carolina to New Jersey, we were used to have months rent up front plus the security deposit. Right? When we got to New Jersey, it was double that. So they want 3/4, twice. So we were looking at a house that, the housing market up there was crazy. And being in the military, I got an allowance for housing. But they wanted us to pay $6,000 just to move in. Move into what? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath house? No, I'm not paying you $6,000 just to move in. So we initially went and moved on base. But, when you think about what's going on here, I see tax abatements all over the city. I see it all the time. I work in Grandview Heights. I see tax abatements for 15 years. But guess what? Ain't no black folks living in Grandview Heights. They're not getting these tax abatements. When the Short North Posse was hanging out in Grandview Heights, there was no tax abatements going on. All of a sudden now they done tore down everything over there. Now they got money for tax abatements for 15 years. So you go down the street, they want to build condos, $1 million condos, right down there when they want to build this new stadium for the Columbus Crew. They want to start tearing up Sullivan. But, they didn't want to do nothing when we in there. The mayor himself walked down the street and said, oh, it's terrible here. But damn it, it's been terrible. But you don't care about this. You don't care about this. And you want to do this for a photo op. No, you got people out here that really, really need these communities reinvested in. And when it comes to healthcare, it ties right into that. So yeah, I'm for Medicare for all too, because I think healthcare is a right. I shouldn't have to worry about whether or not I'm gonna pay my bills or pay this doctor bill. You know what I'm saying? I think that everybody should have a way to get healthcare, and it should be free. I don't think nobody should pay for anything. I think we should be able to go to the hospital, you get seen, and you leave. And
that's in the UN Charter, right? The United States founded the UN, 1948. Healthcare is in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the UN Charter, 1948.
See, the issue with the UN is that the United States got more power than UN than any other country.
I think you missed my point.
I get what you know.
The United States started it, right?
Yeah.
It's really an extension of U.S. foreign power.
Yeah.
So they made foreign nations sign to this agreement, and then at the same time denying us what they are advocating for other people to have.
Yeah, and you're right on that. So we have to get people like Morgan in office, get people like Morgan in office, so she can go fight for stuff like that. Because as long as we keep letting other people do it, the pharmaceutical companies beating us hand and foot. Insulin is skyrocketed. The guy who did it.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh.
So
she cold-blooded.
it's hard to get him to at 3 minutes.
Because I'm passionate about this stuff.
We're coming to the end of our conversation. I appreciate everyone and their questions. If you have specific questions for the panelists, I've asked them to be willing to answer those questions for the audience. So I just put them on the spot because they're going to agree to it anyway.
Right.
Please do. And in the back, Kwesi has a petition for Morgan. If anyone would like to sign her petition for her to get on the ballot in March for the 3rd congressional
Third congressional district.
District for
U.S.
Congress, for U.S. Congress. I like brain fart there. I apologize. We do have elections coming up. I have registration forms for those who are not registered or those who have not voted in the last 3 years because you probably have been purged. And we don't want you to go to the ballot box either in March, which I hope you vote in the primaries, but definitely not in November and not be registered to vote. We want to make sure that on all of our social media sites that we post that felons are able to register to vote because I've also encountered individuals who said, I have a felony, and you have to educate them on what their actual rights are once they come out of incarceration.
I would add February 15th is the deadline to vote, and then to register to vote. Yeah, you have to do that before February 15th. And then the way that we build and win people-powered movements is with people. So please do sign up to volunteer, canvas. It's all grassroots, like I said, and we need people engaged to be able to hit our targets. So more information in the back.
And then I want to thank our panelists. Can we give them a round of applause? I think
and our moderator.
Our
aggressive Kevin moving.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
But I was repeating his forms, and they'll cut you off mid-sentence. So, I appreciate everyone for coming out. What I think we need to walk away with is that let's not just walk out and say we attended a meeting. Let's walk out with something that we're going to do personally as an action to move us forward as a people. Whether that be get someone registered, participate in a canvas, or get someone into office that's going to actually work for you, work hard for you, and not against you. Those things are really, really important. I'll say join your civic associations. I think I'm going to stay on NAACP for the moment. Or even area commissions. I'm an area commissioner. There are commissions all over the city of Columbus. Get involved, get engaged. You'll find out lots of things that are happening in your city and in your communities that you're not going to be made aware of until they ground break. So I will say, please, do not walk out of this room and say we just had a meeting. We will contact you with all the upcoming events, and you'll probably see at least a few of these individuals at each one of those events. So thank you so much, and you were a great audience.
Organized.
That's right.
I forgot to use our word.
We gotta get a picture of this.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Oh,
in front of, that's good.
Over there?
I'll get something in as well. Oh, you want me in here? Like I put my contacts on. And my contacts. You know, I don't wear this stuff. Elisha, yes. Come up here. Thank you for being our moderator. Come on in, move in like you hey. You talking about you don't like each other. Let's like each other. Right here, please, Morgan.
Oh, sorry.
Go here first.
I'm so used to looking at it.
No, right here first. Thank you. And I got it.
I knew because we were talking. We can go. Wait, I just want to make sure I talk to in the back. Hold on 1 second.
All right, thank you for tuning in, those that did. It's Brother Tim, and I'm out. Rather, let me say we out.